Hello. I am here at American Airlines Center where Game 7 did not go the Golden Knights' way, and I'm facing the wrong direction because there's this crap all over the place. You can see the green lights flashing behind me, and if I stood anywhere that way, it would be a disaster. So we're just going to stand here and make it look like I am in some sort of a closet that makes me look very odd and is not exactly the background that most people would expect me to have one of these. Nonetheless, we are doing it. As you can tell, at the moment, I am not that fired up in an angry way because the Golden Knights did not play poorly in Game 7. It's just disappointing because you look at what has ended at this point, and it's like, it just sucks because it's a situation where it doesn't always work out, where the team who wins the cup then gets to continue having a realistic opportunity to do it again. Like, I know a lot of teams are good the next time. I know a lot of teams have opportunities that they can potentially put themselves in a position where maybe they are going to be able to get there and repeat. But like, in the end, usually it's really hard to do. And for a minute there, and I think like everybody, I don't know how you couldn't at least have that feeling after the deadline that was, and the health that started to come around, and then 2 games into the playoffs, they're in a phenomenal situation. And it's like, okay, well, maybe, right? And then you watch them, and I come out here and I declare that this is the best team they've ever played in any playoff series ever. I still believe it. I think the Dallas Stars may go on and win the cup. And honestly, if you're a Golden Knights fan, I think that's what you should be cheering for. I honestly believe that's probably what we should all be cheering for. Like, I know that there's some animosity with a lot of this, but like, nobody wants to see Edmonton win. Nobody needs to see Colorado win again. Like, yeah, maybe Vancouver, but nobody wants to see Canada win. So like, to me, like, if they go on and do it, I think it does in many ways validate maybe that the situation we were in, the how close maybe we were. So okay, like, and I know everyone's yapping that they don't want to see DeBoer win and all that. I get it. But to me, I'll just get back to Vegas. It's like, this was going to be a really difficult series. This was going to be a situation where this is a really deep team. This is a really, really difficult challenge that they were faced. Like, they're the 1 seed for the reason. And I don't think Vegas is an 8 seed. And I asked Pete about that in the post game, and he said, absolutely, it's the toughest draw we've ever had in the first round. And he gave a lot of credit to the Golden Knights. He even said they're deeper than they were a year ago. And I think that that's probably fair when you look at the fact that sitting down from me in the press box was probably Dorofeev and Paul Cotter, and Caden Korzak's up there, Ben Hutton's up there. There's Nick Hague is injured in the first round. Like, there's a lot to look at to say, wow, this is a really deep team. It's a really good team. It's really had a really good chance. In the end, obviously, it never quite came together. I do think there are some now lingering questions that we're going to have to get answered, that it's probably not going to get answered until deep into next season. We'll get to that in a minute. But like, I don't think I expected it to feel the way that it feels with it ending as it did. Like, it's going to come to an abrupt end. And like, I never thought that they were going to lose that Game 6 because they're just too good to go down that way, right? Like, it was just unlikely that it was going to come to just like, oh, now we lose 4 in a row. Like, this team didn't really lose 4 in a row. Like, we think back to all the years, they just don't. They're just too good to lose 4 in a row, and they weren't going to do it, and they didn't. But then for it to go here where it's like, one more goal, one more moment, one more non-shot off of Alec Martinez's skate that somehow goes in the absolute perfect shot. If that doesn't happen, we're talking about moving forward, not only moving forward, but the team will have grown and knocked out, arguably, I think, the best team in the conference. And now all of a sudden, the path forward is a lot different than maybe it looked last year, where I thought the path forward got progressively more difficult. Maybe Edmonton was better than Dallas, but that Florida team was in a good position, and it built up. So for it to now come to this abrupt end and be just over, where it's a series where the score was actually tied when its series is over after 7 games, it feels more to me as if last season ended. Like, not it's not about this year. Like, it to me, it's almost the same run, and that's why, like, I have the rain ends down here, and then on the I said, I titled this one like "Let's talk about a hell of a run." Like, I'm sure most people would look at that and say, "Well, it was 7 games. You were in the playoffs for 2 weeks. Like, that's not much of a run, and you won two, and then we're trailing the rest of the way effectively." I get it. But to me, like, it does feel like that run of being champions, that run of being the best team in the league now inevitably is over. There's no way around it. The Golden Knights had everything there for them. The players were there. The opportunity was there. The front office added and gave them the chance. And I'll dig into some of that a little bit. I don't want to go too deep on like what the future and whatever and all of how we got here, but it does feel like there was a chance, there was an opportunity, there was something there, and for it to like close the book. Some Jeff says over there, like it does feel like that run, those moments, that chance is just over now. And in many ways, it's like that can't come back. And I don't know. We'll see. Because like I feel like I'm looking at Colorado and I'm feeling like they're kind of doing something similar. So I don't know. Like maybe it can continue. Maybe it will continue. And granted, it is important to note like it is going to be a different team. There are going to be some different feelings going forward. But like to get to see Hannafin and how his success in this postseason hurdle didn't really have the massive success, but like to see him out there and him go through a war with this team, and then obviously there's going to be a lot more coming forward. So it is going to feel like a continuation, but in many ways, like it does kind of just lock it off, and we're all going to have to watch somebody else lift the cup. And again, like I'm going to tweet this out tonight. It's the last thing I'm going to tweet tonight, and I think that we all need to remember this and for always remember it is like the fact of the matter is the ultimate goal of in my opinion of this team coming to Vegas. The ultimate goal was that the greatest city in the world has its name etched on the cup. It's there. The next team that raises it, it will be there on their cup days. It will be there always. Like that's there. So that to me, like you can always take solace in like, yeah, it is going to suck that this is not going to end the way that we hoped it was going to, and that this team isn't going to take that step into potentially being a legendary team. It's still there. You will always be able to look at the Stanley Cup for as long as all of us live, and it will say Vegas on the cup. So like that in it of itself is what it is. All right, let's talk a little bit about the game and the series as a whole, and then we'll take some steps back and some steps forward of what got us to this point, what went wrong, what went right, how we got to this point, and then we'll obviously I'm going to have to make an impassioned plea to bring Jonathan Marchessault back. We will do that at some point, and then I'll talk kind of about where I see maybe my initial thoughts on where we go from here and what we learned from this and what maybe is scary about what we just saw. But first, I want to tell you that the Jimmerson Law Firm sponsors all SinBin Periscopes this season. So shout out to the Jimmerson Law Firm, as always, for being one of Las Vegas's preeminent law firms specializing in high-stakes business, civil, and family litigation. When winning matters, seek out the Jimmerson Law Firm. And of course, my travel, the reason I have these stupid damn green lights flashing behind me at the moment that I really wish would shut off at some point, in which case I can then turn the camera around and have a legitimate background instead of danger, lasers in use. Somebody sent that earlier in the chat, and I didn't know what the hell they're talking about. And now I see it. I'm actually going to take a step this way so it doesn't say that anymore, because that is annoying. That is brought to you by Vegas Night and Day Heating and Cooling. Vegas Night and Day Heating and Cooling, VKDAC.com, a local company that is a fantastic local company that if you ever need anything with your air conditioning or cooling units, make sure you call them. They have a very special offer that we were planning on offering into round two and making it only in round two, but we're going to do it a little bit of a different way this time because I'm making a call right here on the spot right now. it has been $5 or 5% off of new AC units and 10% off of repairs. They wanted to offer 10% off new AC units and 15% off repairs for the entire second round as long as the Golden Knights are alive. I'm going to make it as long as the second round is alive at all. If in the NHL, if the second round is alive, you can take advantage of that. Plus, if you don't know or don't have any sort of air conditioning issues at the moment, go to vkdac.com. Have them come out. They do a $50 assessment of your air conditioning unit. Make sure that it's not going to break when it gets to be 116. I'll tell you a little bit more about them later. Let's get back to today's game. vkdac.com. They're the reason I'm here. They're the reason I traveled 3 times to Dallas, and I would have been traveling to Denver tomorrow. Had some cool dinners and some cool things lined up. I'm disappointed because I'm very tight with a lot of people in the Denver media. So it would have been really awesome to preview a Denver series now instead. And look, I got fucking streamers on my stupid feed. Okay, so this game in and of itself, like, let's just look at this particular one. Game 6 was Vegas's best at doing what they needed to do to start looking fast again in this series. And I think that there is something to game 6 that I do believe we're going to probably harness pretty strong throughout the remainder of this offseason. Because if you think back to the 7 games as a whole, in 6 of them, the Golden Knights were not the faster team. The Golden Knights were not the team that was probably going to be the one that's likely to get more out in transition, likely to beat you with speed through the neutral zone, to do some of the things that we have been at times used to what the Golden Knights have been best at. They didn't look that way for 6 games in this series, but that game 6 and their ability to use the outsides of the neutral zone to kind of zip through there, and you saw the game snowballing that way. And I didn't think Dallas played poorly, and Dallas said they didn't play poorly. That indicated, like, hey, it's still in there. There is still that ability in there, and this is with kind of a beaten down Mark Stone, likely a not quite fully up to speed Tomas Hertl. Obviously, the lower body injury of Will Karlsson, that's some sort of issue. Hanifin just working his way in. Haig not in the lineup. Like, there were some things, and trust me, I'm not making excuses for that, because Dallas ends up being the better team. They deserve to win this, and we will get there. But to have that game and to be able to see that and see the ability to, we still have that in it. And if they can just get back to elite defending and then utilizing that portion of the game, there's a lot of excitement for where it can go next season. No matter how the roster changes, the main core of the team is still going to be there. And there's no doubt, to me, that game, this game, all the other games, you name it, it proves Noah Hanifin's awesome. Like, Noah Hanifin is, when we got him, I said he's the second best defenseman on the team. Throw that in the garbage. That man's the best defenseman on the team. That guy is a stud. So that's really good to have that player for 8 years. The trade, I'll get to the deadline eventually, doesn't look as good now because of the situation, but I'll get to that. I don't want to go off topic yet. That portion of that game did not show up in game 7. The Golden Knights had their opportunities. The Golden Knights got out in transition a few times. The Golden Knights did some things that gave them an opportunity to win the game. It's not to say that they were the better team in this game. I would argue they were not. It's not to say that this style of game would have won them enough games to win this series. It probably would not have. They needed to do either what they did in game 6 or what they had done in game 1, which is utilize defense to generate offense. That's not how this series progressed. And I think there's a legitimate argument that Pete DeBoer recognized that, made that adjustment, got his team to play a little bit differently, and put them in a situation where they were not going to give those opportunities. So you look back to it, and it's like, all right, well, what happened to the speed? To me, the neutral zone just became a little bit more clogged, not because the Golden Knights were not getting through there and making the right decisions and doing the things that they had to do in game 6, and also had trouble doing at different times over the course of the season. Instead, this is a game that, to me, the exits just weren't quite at the level that they had to be. There was just not enough controlled exiting of the zone when the game was tied, or at the moments when they were down by 1, before it went into the shell at the end. That it is what it is. They're an elite defensive team. Their goalie was on fire in the third period. Like, I don't want to go off the deep end about the inability to score once you're down to the Dallas Stars. Like, that's if it's a 4-game series and they get wiped out and that's how we end up, okay, maybe we can go off that route. This is a 7-game series. The Golden Knights beat them 3 times. They just beat them in an elimination game. It was there, all right? So it's not, we're not at that point. We're not saying that. But the exits just, and what's it's like infuriating to me in this game is like, it's this close. It's this close. They're getting across the blue line. They're just not there on top of the other players. We're trying to get that speed going a hair early from what it should have been. And you end up with a lot of times the puck comes just across the blue line and shot right back in. Get it right out, have that chance. There's a stick check right at that moment. Like, it just wasn't quite crisp enough. And you think about it, look at the goal. There's a play behind the goal. There's a fired puck off the wall to a player who now has it directly on the other side of the blue line. He carries it forward. They create a real problem, a real dilemma at the blue line for a player who has not played much in this series in Lundqvist. Force him to make a decision. He fails the test miserably. Now you've got a 2-on-1 walking in with a player who can snipe the goalie, who knows he can snipe the goalie. He comes way out. You've got to tap in on the back door. It started with the exit. It started with that clean exit out of the defensive zone to get that opportunity to now carry through a neutral zone that's beyond them, right? That was the problem, I thought, tonight, is they just weren't beyond enough Dallas players often enough to get those chances. The Eichel 2-on or 3-on-2 opportunities were minimal. There really wasn't a lot of Stevenson flying through the neutral zone. It just, a lot of that was not quite there. And that's what led to a lot of times, multiple times during this game, certainly in most of the first period, a good portion of the third period until Dallas decided, okay, we've gone far enough. Now just not allow a goal. When they were pushing, it felt like literally the ice is not equal. You are going uphill, or there's like a wind in your face. There's a lot of wind in Vegas right now. Like, it's that. That's what it felt like. And I thought that was just because it just wasn't quite at the level getting it across the neutral zone. Defensively, I didn't think they were bad. Like, it really didn't. There was not a single breakaway. I do not believe they had a single 2-on-1 in the game. They did not have a lot of 3-on-2 rushes up the ice. The gap control was very good. Hannafin being at the top of the list on that particular one. The exits were not a lot of turnovers. Yes, there's Shea's Little, not the best exit there. And then a stick check that Hurdle loses to Wyatt Johnston with a T. That's disappointing. I like all of that. I hate the whole, like, it's a razor thin thing. Like, I know that. And honestly, I think if Vegas wins this game, I still probably walk out of this series saying I'm not sure they're actually better than this Dallas team. But they got across the line. Now you have an easier series to get yourself going. And arguably, maybe Colorado's not. We will see, maybe. But I would have liked that matchup for Vegas. It just, this team needed to build, and it never quite built. And that partially is because of the makeup and the style of play that it was. Like, you didn't have the greatest makeup of the team growing through the entire season. Then you buy your number one defenseman at the deadline. You buy a player that's supposed to really change the way you're generating offense. Don't really ever find a fit for him because he had knee surgery when you buy him. The other guy that you bought at the deadline becomes a healthy scratch for more than half of the series. That's a disaster in and of itself, that he didn't help out in any way. 2 years in a row now they've bought a player at the deadline and he becomes a healthy scratch. Last one, not nearly as important as this one, much more important. This one could have used that second and fourth round pick to have a player that was much better, that was in the lineup, that would have made a difference, that could have helped. That we'll get to the deadline. I promise I will get you there. I'm not planning on shutting up for quite a while here on this one. But in this game, it's like, it's tough. The goalie was good. The defense, for the most part, basically the entire game, outside of one particular play that I didn't love, was good. The exits were good enough to get it across the line, and the chances, Marchessault misses the open net. The puck slips off the side of Eichel's stick. there's a couple of other chances in close that maybe there's a good chance there. You never quite get that deflection that goes on goal. Like there are opportunities there that maybe it could have gone Vegas's way. This is not a blowout. This is not the other team dominated you. This is not game 3. Like it's not any of that. So it's difficult. And obviously, like I've seen it in the chat and I can't find the thing now. The goal on Hill, if you watch it really closely, and I doubt people will actually do this, but if you watch it real closely, you will realize that it went directly off of Martinez's skate, straight off the blade. Even if he had known that was going to happen, he's going to have a hard time getting all the way across and getting up to the corner there. Like that's just disappointing that that's the moment. That being said, I do think there is something to be said about the depth of the two teams and what ended up transpiring on that particular shift. And in many ways, across most of the series, like Ty Dellandrea had a game where he won it. Will Carrier almost had a game where he won it. And in many ways did earlier because the Noah Hannafin goal was with the fourth line out on the ice. Like that does make a difference in the series. And their line to start the third period after Vegas had a pretty darn good shot towards the end of the second period to start the third period. You can't get hemmed in. You can't get given goat off the wall. That opportunity, which it's right there. It's right down in front of me. I'm looking right where it happened. You can't really allow that shot to that group in that moment. So, like, yeah, the shot's outrageously lucky. There's no reason that puck should go in the goal. There's absolutely no situation in which we should be sitting here saying, wow, that's the goal that ended the Golden Knights' reign as Stanley Cup champions. That's really not what it should have been. Nonetheless, the situation that added up to it, we talk about it all the time, make your own luck. Give yourself a position to create your own luck. There's no doubt, in my opinion, that's where we were, right? Like, that's what the Golden Knights needed, was making more of their luck. Like, it is what it is. The rest of the series, like, as a whole, that's the one that I feel like we're going to remember this series in a pretty negative light, unfortunately. And that's tricky because of the fact that they did have a 2-0 lead. And when the away team wins the first 2 games in a series, especially as the 8th seed, they win most of the time. So to then have the other team come back and you struggle to score basically throughout all of it, you never look like the faster team. You basically only have one game throughout all of it that you truly look like this is the team that will win the Stanley Cup. Like, yeah, I do think there was a little bit of a false sense of security after game 2 that it's like, wow, they're never going to score on Vegas. So all they have to do is get the lead. But that, it wasn't going to be as easy if Ottinger started playing better, and he did. So I just think when we look back towards it and you think back to like all the series the Golden Knights have lost, and I know nobody wants to do that at the moment, but like the Washington series, they got smoked. There's not a lot you could do there. The San Jose series, they won. Like they won that series and the league cheated them, or Eric Furlat and Dan O'Halloran cheated them. Okay, fine. The next time they lose to Dallas in the bubble, and it's like that team got pushed around a little bit. That team, all of a sudden, there was an issue, right? Like this team lives in transition, can't find a way to score in the neutral zone. Well, that led to a change in how they wanted to operate, and inevitably, eventually, led to a new head coach that gave you a different look, right? That gave you a different style of how you wanted to attack and how you wanted to defend and how that would end up generating offense. The Montreal series is the one that we're always going to look back as the one that got away, really. And in many ways, this one, it's probably going to land on the other team ends up being better. And so with that and understanding where that is and what that means, the first thing to diagnose is why, based on the Golden Knights side. Why were the Golden Knights in this particular series second best against a team that depth-wise looks very good on paper, but in reality did not get much out of Joe Pavelski, did not get much out of Tyler Seguin, did not get much out of Matt Duchene, got very little to almost nothing out of Joe Pavelski. Really down their lineup defensively, not good. Ryan Suter, I thought, had a fine series, better than he's had against Vegas in the past, but Nils Lundqvist was a disaster, barely even able to get on the ice, and then helps Vegas score the only goal that they score in Game 7. That team all of a sudden doesn't look as deep. So you ask yourself, how did the Golden Knights, who are a deep team, who have a great looking roster, who have good players off the ice in Game 7 based on being healthy scratches, how does that happen? The reason partially is because you didn't get elite performance out of Mark Stone. You didn't get elite performance out of Tomas Hertl. You didn't get elite performance out of Shea Theodore. You didn't get elite performance for the most part in the series out of Alex Pietrangelo. You didn't get elite performance for basically every single player on the roster, William Karlsson, Jonathan Marchessault, that made more than $4 or $5 million, right? All the players that everyone's pissed off about that the Golden Knights are way over the salary cap, and admittedly, I didn't love it either, but it's dead now. But all of that, you need the play out of those players. You need $9 million out of those players, and that is why they didn't look fast. They didn't look dangerous. They didn't look like they were the team that's just going to pound the opposing team, which is what we saw through Florida series, through the Dallas series. They came back here in Game 6 after losing twice and destroyed a Dallas Stars team that was good, last year's team. This one's better, but last year's team was also very good. That team was getting great performances. And in many ways, and this is probably the best way to look at it, is when you look at how much a player makes against the salary cap. And I know some people don't like to look at the salary cap. I do, because I do think that that's like your piggy bank. You have this much amount. You've got to get that. You have to get that out of your players. Otherwise, you're not going to win. The other team's going to get more of it. This particular season compared to last season, almost everyone played at or above what they were making. Like, it was hard to find a guy that you're like, well, I think he's underperforming his $6 million contract. They don't have a guy $6 million, whatever, but maybe Karlsson is. That didn't happen. This year, it's down the line over and over and over, a lot of the players. So the simple part is like, I'm not going to pick on the coach. I'm not going to. It's even not quite fair in this particular situation to pick on the roster management, because those players have shown it. There's no reason to rip apart the roster when you can bring it back and add 3 players to it at the deadline and bring up some younger players and have what looked like a team that could do it. It's hard to pick on the construction of the roster in the event of, you understand, all of these players making that amount of money didn't play to the level that they did. Moving forward now and understanding this, and also trying to read what did we expect to happen coming into this particular series, that's the part that I think there might have been a misread, or I don't even have an or. Like, the entire season, regular season, the Golden Knights were inconsistent. They were unable to just find their problems and destroy them the next night, as they did throughout all of the postseason last year. They just didn't have that. And we said it all year, and Cassidy went to 9 surgeries after this season, like during the season, and they're going to use 500 man games lost, and they're going to use all these things and point at all of it. But in the end, it's like, looking at the roster and understanding what was going to come this series, understanding that at the very best, it was going to be Edmonton. You were getting Edmonton, Vancouver with Demko was the expectation, or Dallas. It could have been Colorado. It could have been Winnipeg. The fact of the matter is, whoever that landed on who you were playing was going to be damn good. Really, really fucking good. That was a fact. We knew that. So when you look at what is this team going to be, I think it's hard to project Alex Pietrangelo is going to take a step back in the playoffs. There was really no reason to see that. Yeah, maybe he didn't have as good of a regular season, but I don't know that we would have projected that. I don't think it's fair to project. And also, it's important to note, his best game was Game 6. He makes a huge impact. It's still in there. There's an expectation of that's hard to expect that. But like Mark Stone, the expectation that he's going to be the elite player is really based solely on hope and like grasping at straws of he did it last year, he's going to do it again. Well, that's really effing hard. Was highly unlikely. Buying a player that's only going to get you 5 or 6 games and coming off knee surgery and never really had an opportunity to play on a line and has not played important hockey for a long time and has seen decline in his stats over the course of time, really difficult to project him to be the $7 million player that he was going to be. The injury bug was unlikely to just subside, right? Like last season, think about this. Nick Hague missed games 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. That's 6 games that Nick Hague missed. If you count William Carrier starting off the series, missing the first 4 games of the series, and then at the end of that Winnipeg series, Shea Theodore and Braden McNabb each missing, one for an illness, one for a broken rib. Take those. That was 6 man games lost to skaters. 6 over 22 postseason games. That was unlikely to happen again. Nick Hague did it by himself in this series. Just Nick Hague. And obviously, they didn't have anyone else really go out. The other team was more banged up. They missed Radek Faksa. We now see that that mattered. They missed Mason Marchment. They also missed Yanni Hakanpää throughout the entirety of the series, which means Nils Lundqvist does not play, which means they have 6 defensemen, right? They were more banged up than Vegas going in, but the expectation that you're going to take a roster that for years and years and years now has been banged up and suddenly get that 2 months of perfect health is unrealistic. It's unrealistic. So that's where going deep in at the deadline doesn't look so good now. It looked like, I understand everyone was on all super gung-ho, and I came on here a number of times and said, like, I was skeptical of Anthony Mantha. I think I got proven right on that one. I said I love the player in Noah Hannafin, but what I don't like about the Noah Hannafin deal is the assets you had to give up to get him. Like, think about the amount of salary that they bought out to allow this team to have this run in this postseason. It didn't work. It didn't work, right? So to decide we're doing all these picks and all this bought off salary and all of this to supplement this team in this moment, it was a lot. It was a lot to give yourself a chance, knowing the path is going to be a fucking Kilimanjaro, right? Like, it's going to be brutal. They knew where they were at the deadline. They knew they were going to get in the playoffs. They knew they were probably going to get fairly healthy. They probably knew at the moment that Mark Stone had a good shot to play in the postseason. All of that's there. To make all those deals, to put yourself in a position where you've now hurt the future even further, and really that's going to start catching up. And I'm not going to do all of this now, but you look back at it and it's like, man, that was a lot of money to do the Noah Hannafin, where, yes, I love that Noah Hannafin's on the team. I'm pumped that Noah Hannafin's on the team. But if they had just not traded for Noah Hannafin and gone out and bought Noah Hannafin in the summer for just a little bit more than what they paid him, or maybe even the same, then you have these other picks back and you have the ability to now make a better shot next season. That currency, it's not about what it's going to look like in 5, 6, 7 years. It's about what are they going to do at the deadline? What are they going to be able to do to build this team? Because this team has made it very clear to us for multiple years that they are building their roster around man games lost. So to complain about man games lost and say we never got the roster correctly to where we wanted it is kind of white noise to me. The roster is here in this position to do what they wanted to do because of man games lost, because you are able to replace those salaries and buy down other salaries and give yourself a roster that is very deep because it's legally over the salary cap, right? Like, that's why we got to this point. That's why everyone thought, hey, they've been inconsistent all season long. They've been basically a point per game team for like 65 games or whatever it was. And now all of a sudden, now they're going to be the best team in the league. That's because you spent all these assets to give yourself this opportunity. That is part of it. That is part of what has got to happen, is that you're not going to get the full roster ever having opportunities because you're utilizing it to make your roster deeper at the deadline. They were not the deepest roster in the league before the deadline. You add Tomas Hertl and Noah Hannafin to your roster. Now it pushes other players down. You become a lot deeper. You're in a lot better situation. And other players coming back in the lineup puts you in a good position. But to do that and now have all of this now effectively wasted, there's an argument to be made there, and we will make that moving forward. But to make that decision and utilize all of this in this particular situation, in this particular run, it now hinders next year's team and what the ability that they're going to be able to do next year. Because now it's Brendan Brisson and the pick that they make at the Sphere whenever we get there. I don't even know when the draft is. That's the next thing we got. But once we have that, that's it. Like, that's all you got. There's no other options. There's no other, like, it's going to be awfully difficult to go buy another player and buy it all the way down. It's not there anymore. You did it all. You did all these different things, and you're not probably going to recoup much when you have to make the moves to cut down from where you are now to where you're going to be next season. So that's where I look back at the deadline, and there's going to be questions. Obviously, it is abundantly clear the Anthony Mantha trade was a disaster. Should not have happened. It looked way worse because 3 days later or 2 days later, the same amount of picks were traded for way better players, right? Like, all right. So is what it is. That one's bad. That one hurt because you could have potentially bought a player that actually would score. So that part hurts. Hannafin, probably going to be a good deal, except for the fact that if they were to do this with an RFA, give away multiple picks, multiple first-round picks, have the player on the long-term deal that is inevitably not going to look very good at the end of the deal, to have him for the now, it's a lot. It's a price to pay to get the player and then a price to pay to keep the player. And in between, you get one playoff run that you've now wasted. Right? Like, that was the biggest benefit of getting Hannafin at this deadline, was that you would get him for this run and he could be the best defensive player on the team. And he was, and he's a big reason why we're even here. Without Noah Hannafin, what are they? I don't know. That part, like that one, all right, but it's a lot. The last one is Hertl. He never got to that point. I still am wondering, why did San Jose give that player up? Why was San Jose so willing at that point to say, yes, take him? We're not even asking for that much, and we'll hold some salary for 6 seasons. Like, maybe they knew something. Maybe they saw something. He's not. That one that we had in this playoff series is not going to help the Golden Knights do much next season. He's got to be a lot better. We're going to give him the offseason. We're going to give him all the time. We're going to judge him as we go for next season. But that trade stands as a bit of an issue because it was one of the runs was this one. He's not young. I think he's 30. He's not young, right? So you've now wasted one of them. So that's that. The key is going to be, like, how do you find a way to get back to being a great offensive scoring team? How do you find a way to put yourself in a position where you are going to be the team that you can be before? Because right now, it doesn't look like they're going to get back to being an elite defensive team. Like, maybe it does change a little bit with an entire season off, and maybe things can look a little bit better. I don't know, but it doesn't look like that's what it's going to be. So maybe they do need to figure out, all right, what are we going to look at? Where are we going to go from there? That's going to be a big part of it. Now, to the elephant in the room, which it is what it is. It shouldn't have gotten to this point. We should not be here at this moment. Alas, we are. And we're going to cross this bridge at some point, and it's either going to be awesome or a horrific moment when it happens. Jonathan Marchessault just played the last game on his contract. Jonathan Marchessault does not have a contract as of July 1st. If he does not have a new contract prior to July 1st, he will have the ability to sign anywhere. Here's my plea. Here's how I view this. And I know that this is going to bother a lot of people because the way that people like to think is that you must do anything at all cost in any situation to make your team just that little bit better to win the Stanley Cup. I understand it. I've seen the Golden Knights do it. They've done it a number of times that have bothered me, and a lot of those went on to end up being a huge part of winning the Stanley Cup. I understand it. However, in this particular case, and it's very, very, very important that I'm saying this because the Golden Knights do have a Stanley Cup win. The word Vegas is currently written on the Stanley Cup. By the way, I hated that tweet from the Stanley Cup account. That's bullshit. What are we doing? What are we dunking on the team that just won? Like that? What are we doing? I hated it nonetheless, and I tweeted it, and I hope they know. I hated that tweet. The Stanley Cup Twitter account should not be dunking on the Stanley Cup champions losing by 1 goal in Game 7. It's ridiculous. Okay, nonetheless, the Golden Knights won a Stanley Cup. The Golden Knights have become what they've become in many ways because of a massive culture of success and winning over the course of the previous 7 years. The reason there are X amount of people watching this stream now or later or whatever, and so many people commenting, and all these people that follow my site and go to the games and all, and the TV ratings. And by the way, the TV ratings for female is amazing. Shout out to female Golden Knights fans. You're killing the game. We love it. It's awesome. I'm pumped about that because that is great for me too. Love female hockey fans. It's awesome. However, not a however, and I don't know why I would say however there, and they've become a fan base that is incredibly strong, incredibly powerful, incredibly passionate. A massive reason for that, a massive reason for that is because of a culture on the ice that in many ways was created by multiple players. Some of them are gone, some of them are still here. One of them happened to win the Conn Smythe. One of them happens to be a player who is literally the fabric of the team, woven into the fabric of the team. That's a direct quote from the head coach who won the Stanley Cup for this team. Jonathan Marchessault's voice is woven into the Stanley Cup, into the fabric of the Stanley Cup team. Let me bring you back to when I was sitting on the other side of the rink little less than 12 hours ago. No, little more than 12 hours ago. At 10:30 this morning, the Golden Knights had morning skate. I've been to, I don't know, 500 morning skates or something. And they almost always look very similar. There's not a lot of change to what happens in a morning skate. But what is very clear in a Golden Knights morning skate is that there is a attitude, there is a style that is there. There is something to it that allows them to take their minds off of what is at stake and focus on that morning skate. Jonathan Marchessault is the reason that exists. If Jonathan Marchessault is not a part of morning skate will not look the same. Morning skate will not feel the same. Morning skate will not be the same. Thus, that also translates to in the locker room before the game, in the locker room after the game, on the bench, on whatever, in the community, you name it. Any situation, Jonathan Marchessault's voice, Jonathan Marchessault, the human, is a massive part of what the Vegas Golden Knights are and have become and will and need to continue to be. He is more important to the roster than the potential upgrade that you can have by tweaking it just a little bit to give him slightly more or give someone else that money. I understand. I perfectly recognize, and I will readily admit it. It is not hard to admit it. There is an alternate path that involves Jonathan Marchessault not being on the Golden Knights, that the Golden Knights roster and hockey team can potentially be better at hockey. That is possible. It is not guaranteed. It is not guaranteed. That's very important to note. I see this all the time. Dump him, move on, get somebody better. No. Yes, it might happen, but just saying that you think you're guaranteeing it's going to happen, it is not guaranteed. Instead, take the lick on the possibility that it might not be the absolute number one most optimal strategy to winning hockey games on every single given night. Take that away, because that amount and the difference between what the upgrade is going to be is in no way worth what Jonathan Marchessault means to this organization to allow him to walk at this particular moment in his career. There is hockey left in Jonathan Marchessault. There are massive goals left in Jonathan Marchessault. There is a retirement left in Jonathan Marchessault's career. That man has to be the first name that goes up in the rafters at T-Mobile Arena. It has to happen. And the best and only way to make that happen is to have him remain on the team. Look this morning, today, after morning skate in the locker room, there was a discussion with Jack Eichel about Game 7 memories, and his memories included making fun and joking around with Phil Kessel. There is something to be said about having that particular type of player around, even if it doesn't help your hockey team. Phil Kessel did not help the hockey team. He really didn't over the course of the year. Instead, he did help them win the Stanley Cup. How much? That we can argue with. But he's still being mentioned a year later by a team that he is not on. He's not even in this league anymore. Jonathan Marchessault must remain part of the fabric of this roster. He has to. And the reason he has to is because the team will look dramatically different without him. The tenor of the organization will be different without him. There is something about that particular player that represents this organization unlike any other player has done. Marc-Andre Fleury did it, and there was a price to pay for letting him go. It was not the same organization, and it took time to overcome it. In that case, they did. Part of the reason they did was because of Jonathan Marchessault. You must find a way to not only keep this player here, but allow him to remain and retire as a Golden Knight and become part of it. And finally, the last part, and I will answer how they will afford him. I will tell you exactly how they're going to afford him in a second. The last reason is because the precedent that it sets, I've talked about this before. You must describe to players on the team and around the league that it is possible to come to Vegas and stay in Vegas and become a Vegas legend and make it to the end of your career with your family who has grown up in this city. He made a comment to me that I never really dawned on me. Jonathan Marchessault has 4 kids, has 4 of them. They are all American citizens because they were all born in Las Vegas. That is part like that. There is something to be said about what's going to happen when Jack Eichel's contract ends. What's going to happen when William Karlsson's contract ends? What's going to happen when Mark Stone's contract ends and Noah Hannifin's contract ends? And all of these guys, if it's constantly, you are gone. You will not make it to the end of your career because we will not allow you to make it to the end of your career. Sometime along the path, someone has to do it. There is no better person or situation than this particular man right now to do it. Here's how they afford it. But first, I'll tell you that this Periscope and all Periscopes are brought to you by the Jimmerson Law Firm. Shout out to the Jimmerson Law Firm for being one of Las Vegas' preeminent law firms specializing in high-stakes business, civil, and family litigation. When winning matters, seek out the Jimmerson Law Firm. Here's how they're going to afford him. They're going to trade one of the defensemen. Probably the one that didn't have a very good series this time around and didn't have a very good season as a whole and was injured for a portion of it. That's the way. That's the path. That's the path. And it sucks. I understand it. It's disappointing. It is another player who is also an original player on this roster, who also won the Stanley Cup. But his voice, his presence, his part of this team is not what Jonathan Marchessault's is. And if you look down the roster and you look towards where they're headed, if Shea Theodore is gone and if Alec Martinez is gone, now you then have Ben Hutton in the lineup all the time. That's perfectly fine with me. You also then have Caden Korzak in the lineup all the time. That's perfectly fine with me. And you could potentially go buy another stay-at-home defenseman who can help, right? Who can make you better. There are ways to do it. They've done it before. They can do it again. It's not that hard to find. In many ways, they've actually found some young ones that have done it. They're there. They can do it. That's the way to do it. What do you do with Chandler Stevenson? What do you do with some of these other guys, the Amadios and Hutton, or, I think Hutton's still under roster, Amadio, and how much does Dorofeev get? Like, I think it all is going to figure itself out. But to me, it starts with Marchessault. You figure out how much money you had to spend to get him to stick around, and however long it has to be. I don't care. It's 3, 4, 5. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Got to find their way. Carrier, I think, is gone. I know a couple of people have said that. I think Will Carrier played his last game as a Golden Knight tonight. And I think there's a legitimate shot that he is going to be here. And yes, you are selling low on Shea Theodore, but you can't sell high. There's no chance to sell high. There was never a chance to sell high because if you sold at the peak, then you don't win the Stanley Cup. You don't have a player to sell high on. It doesn't exist. Like, it's not there. I guess maybe like a Logan Thompson, but like you're not going to get that much back and you don't get any money back from that. So yeah, you are selling low. I understand that. Golden Knights have sold low before. It's worked. I didn't like it, but it has worked. So you have to look at that and say, okay, maybe there is a way. Can you get Stevenson back? Yeah, possibly. Possibly. Didn't have a great job. Didn't have a great season down the stretch. Not really have the best season as a whole. Like, maybe there is a way to stick him around. He also probably wants to stay in Vegas as well. I think he's got two. Yeah, he has two kids now, both born in Vegas. So like, there's still a way. But you got to start with Jonathan Marchessault. You got to find that way. You got to find an ability to make it happen. Thanks to Vegas Night and Day Heating and Cooling for sponsoring all my playoff travel. VKDAC is the website. VKDAC, Vegas Night and Day Heating and Cooling. VKDAC.com. They are giving you 10% off all new air conditioning units and 15% off repairs if they're an American Standard complete system. I don't know what that means, but that's okay because I think that you will know what that means if you call VKDAC, have them set up an appointment. And if nothing's wrong, do me a favor. You've watched 50 minutes of this. Tell them to come out and for $50, look at your air conditioning. And then you'll know that when it's super hot in like a month, that it's not going to break. You're going to know that for $50. And you're going to make me very happy. And you're going to be supporting a local company that supports this site. So it's going to be awesome. So do that. And then if you have to get a new system, these deals last until the end of the second round. So you have to do it in the next probably 2 weeks. Make it happen. VKDAC.com. I will take some questions, and then we will go from there. Get out of here. Do I believe Mantha is gone? Yes. If you can't get in the lineup in the first round of the postseason with a healthy lineup, then you're gone. There's really no way around it. I don't. If he couldn't get in the lineup now, how's he going to stay in the lineup next year? I don't get it. Why are people saying trade Hill on Twitter? I don't understand that. Makes no sense to me. Again, he proved yet again he's the guy. The team, the organization trusts him. The coach trusts him. All of it. They trust him. What was wrong with with Carlson? It was a lower body injury. We don't have any more information about it. Cassidy didn't want to go too deep into it. So that's all we really know. It did hinder his ability to take faceoffs. We made that very clear. That did lead to a trickle-down effect that I do think hurt the team. They potentially could have put him in a different situation and maybe would have been a little bit better had things gone a different route. I do think that hurt, but it's bound to happen. Like, they didn't have Mason Marchment. They didn't have Yanni Hakanpää. They didn't have Radek Faksa for a portion. I'm sure there's other injuries that they have that they're not talking about it, whatever. Will goalie interference come back next year? No, it will not. Mike McKenna is running a liquor store named Macadoodles in St. Louis. That is his new job. I don't think he's going to have time to watch every single Golden Knights game as he has in the past and do a show with me. It's not going to happen. What's the return on Theodore? I think you might get a second-round pick plus. Maybe you can find a way to get a roster player off of that and make it some sort of a hockey deal. I don't think it's horrible. I don't think it's nothing like it has been in some of these deals in the past. But I don't think it's going to be what people are going to want for him, and it's going to hurt. It's going to be disappointing, but that's the situation you put yourself in. That's what happens when you buy a Noah Hannafin at the deadline. That's what happens when you buy a Tomas Hertl at the deadline. That's what happens when you make the right decision and bring Jonathan Marchessault back. That's what happens. So that's it. Would I trade Haig and Howden? I'd consider Haig if the price is right. If somebody's giving me something legitimate on Haig, I'd consider it. I don't think his loss was that big a deal. It wasn't good. Would have been better to have him, but I think he's replaceable. I want something for it, though. Like, I want something good for it. I'm not just doing that to do it. Like, I'm not doing that to make a spot for Caden Korzak to get in the lineup. Like, Caden Korzak's going to have to push him out. I would rather have the depth. I don't think you're going to have to make that move. How do I feel about Stone's performance this series? It wasn't himself. He wasn't quite to the level that Mark Stone should have been at or has been at. Should have been maybe not a fair way to say it. The elite Mark Stone that helped the Golden Knights win the Stanley Cup did not appear in this series. At 5-on-5, he was not much of a factor. And that's a huge reason why the Golden Knights did not win this series. And Is that what it looks like next season? Is that what we have on a Mark Stone now? I don't know. I don't know. I do not know. We are not going to know. Mark Stone's not going anywhere. Mark Stone's going to be there for next season. Mark Stone's going to be the captain of this team. He's going to be around. He's going to have opportunities to show that he's still the guy. If he's not, I don't know where we go from there. If he is, we're in good shape. We think about this as just a moment where he wasn't quite there. Could Petro be traded? No, probably not. Man signed a no move clause. He's got a whole bunch of daughters that live in Vegas. He loves golf. He loves money, as we all do. I don't see any way that he's going to waive his no move clause at this point in his career. I don't think so. I just don't think he's going to do it. I don't think he's going to do it. So no. Is Amadio gone? I'm leaning towards yes, but also I think Jonathan Marchessault has to return. So if I think Jonathan Marchessault has to return, it's going to be awfully difficult to keep everybody. So if Jonathan Marchessault's back, Amadio probably doesn't have a place. But if Jonathan Marchessault's not back and they don't agree with me, it's very possible that Amadio stays. Amadio get healthy scratched in this postseason. Don't love that. Does Logan Thompson deserve a pay raise? Maybe, but he ain't going to get it because he signed a contract. I believe he still has 2 more years under the salary cap. He ain't going to get more money. And no, you're not going to just give him more money and make your cap higher. You're going to wait. Does he deserve a contract extension? Yeah, probably once he becomes eligible. And is he going to make more than he makes currently now? Yeah, probably. My opinion, he should be paid like a very good backup. I would not pay him as a starter in the NHL. Are we cool with paying Duclair? I'd rather not. I'm not a Duclair guy. I don't think he would fit with Cassidy. Not a huge fan of that. What is Vegas' top 6 next season? Jack Eichel, Jonathan Marchessault, Ivan Barbashev, Mark Stone, William Karlsson. Who am I missing? Somebody obvious, right? I don't know. I can't think of who I'm missing. I don't know. I'm running out of thoughts here. Sorry, I had to scroll down. I'm going to take a couple more. Is Martinez retiring? I would guess no. I did. Yeah, he did. I did see him on the ice pretty long. It would not stun me if he does. I think there's still going to be an opportunity in Detroit. I just have this feeling that Detroit's going to say, you know what? Why don't you come up here and help us? And I think he might do it. How far do I think the Stars will go in the playoffs? I think they're going to beat Colorado. I don't know what it's going to look like against Edmonton. That team can score. That team's dangerous. I thought Edmonton had a really good chance to win the Stanley Cup before the thing started. I think that chance has gotten even better. It's the easiest they've passed the test against the Kings, and I think this Kings team might have been better, even though it didn't look it. I think it might have looked it because this Edmonton team is better. I'm going to take Edmonton over Dallas. So I guess it's one more round, but then I don't think we're going to see Dallas be terrible. What do I think about Brisson coming up? I hope there's more to Brendan Brisson than what we've seen to this point. I don't think that he's a player that's going to be a massive difference maker on the roster, but I do think there's a place in the NHL for Brendan Brisson. I just don't know it's with this coach and this system. He's gonna have a hard time pushing through. Look how hard it's been for Paul Cotter to push through. Look how hard it's been for Pavel Dorofeev to push through. It's gonna be hard to push through. Do I think he's in the lineup all year? Probably not. When's the next podcast? I don't know. Jason wants to do it tomorrow. I don't think I'm going to do it tomorrow. I still don't have a flight back. I'm hoping to get a flight in like 8 hours, 7, something like that. I'd like to get out of here as fast as I can and get back to Vegas because Vegas is the best. I don't know. Something this week. It'll be this week at some point. Thank you to everybody who's listened to me all season and watched these and followed the podcast and followed the Twitter and all of this. Like, I only get to be here. I only get to do all of this. I only got to be a part of the Stanley Cup run last season and be at the parade and be on the ice after they won it and held the Stanley Cup ring. And like, I get to do a lot of cool shit. And the reason I get to do so much cool shit is because all of you sit here at 9:30 at night, Vegas time, or 11:24 here, and you watch this. That's the only reason I get to do this. And like, also for sponsoring, for, taking care of my sponsors. That's why I get to do it. But it's because you guys listen. So to me, like, it means a lot. And like, today sucks. This sucks. Like, there's no way around it. Like, it's the end. It's the end of a run that was fucking awesome. That will forever. Like, we're all gonna remember this forever. Like, there will never be a time that you don't remember the 2023 Stanley Cup champions. No one's forgetting 9-3. It happened. It's never going to go away. We're always going to remember. It's going to be awesome. There's going to be better things to come up, I hope, in the future. They're going to have another run. It's going to be like this ain't it. But to me, like, thank you to everybody for watching this, for following, for interacting with me, for being on the Discord, for subscribing to Subtext, for chatting on here, for doing all of this. Like, it means a lot to me. And like, I put in a lot of work. I try to do my best to offer the best insight, the best like statistical stuff, the best analysis, funny things, like, I try to make this more fun. I try to make being a Golden Knights fan as fun as I can possibly make it. And I spend basically all my time doing it. But the reason I do it is because it's fucking awesome. And it's because you guys are awesome and the fan base is awesome. And I'm very, very, very like honored that I get to do this and I get to continue doing this. And I'm going to do it all summer, and I'm going to do it into next season. And I'm going to be here the next time the Golden Knights win the Stanley Cup. I hope it's next season. I really do. I think there's a realistic shot. I think it's going to be hard, but I think there's a realistic shot. And I'm going to be here the next time they do it. And I'm going to be on the road when they do it, and I'm going to be there. It's going to be awesome. And then we're going to come on here and we're all going to celebrate. It's going to be way fucking better than tonight. That's really all I got. Thanks to the Jimmerson Law Firm. Thanks to VKDAC, Vegas Night and Day Heating and Cooling, for sponsoring all of my playoff travel. Thanks to William Hill and Giordano's and all the other sponsors on my site, Kuttner, Dr. Pinniger, you name it. Everybody, thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you to all of you guys. Thanks for being Golden Knights fans. Today sucks, but it's going to get better. This team's really fucking good. This team's really fucking good. They're going to continue being really good. It's not going to fall off a cliff. They're not just going to be shitting all of a sudden. They're going to be really good. Stick around. We're going to keep doing this. We're going to come back even better next year. It's going to be awesome. That's it. Good night. Thanks, everybody.